Let's talk about keeping our pastors healthy this week on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu.
Woohoo! Let's go.
Yeah, healthy churches have healthy pastors, and healthy churches also have the Healthy Churches Toolkit.
Right from the top. Let's go. Let's get into that.
Yeah, let's just get this right off the bat here. I do want you to go online, though, and go to healthychurchestoolkit.com, sign up free for 7 days. Get yourself in there, and because the thing about it is, we're gonna get into this today in the topic, but really, healthy leaders come from systems for building healthy leaders, and you need tools to help you do that. And the Healthy Churches Toolkit has a myriad tools to help with that, whether it's from content that can develop your leaders to frameworks to dynamic tools for managing and managing leaders and developing leaders and managing structures and those kinds of things. So go to healthychurchestoolkit.com, sign up free for 7 days, see how the Healthy Churches Toolkit can help you to build a healthy leadership culture in your church. I'll leave it at that. And this is a topic that's an important one and a sensitive one. I think we've got different folks in the podcast audience. Some are pastors. Many of you are pastors. Many of you are maybe elders or deacons, board members, or maybe just lay leaders. And really, when it comes to having healthy pastors, it's everybody's problem and everybody's responsibility, and everybody kind of has a role to play in that, from the pastor himself to board members to even just members of the congregation participate in that culture. So I'm excited to get into this topic today.
Yeah, that's even an interesting way of framing that up, and which I think maybe even gets to the crux of the issue that we're going to talk about. You're saying that it's everybody's responsibility. I think maybe that's the problem. I don't know that it's seen. I think a healthy, like, elder board, deacon, church council team, I think they do see that as part of it, but I think it's more so on the reactive side. Like, we know it's our responsibility to help care for our pastor if he has a problem. But I don't think it's the proactive view that we're going to get into today of it's our responsibility, and we're going to make sure that we don't get to that point, which is really, this is kind of the point of this episode. I think a lot of church or pastor mental health and even sin issues are preventable. And so, I think, but we are systems guys. We're not counselors.
Right.
We're really talking about this from more of the culture and systems aspect of the church.
Yeah, the uncomfortable reality is that many pastor failures, moral ones, emotional ones, relational ones, they're not just personal crises. These are systemic crises, and churches inadvertently create the conditions where pastors are isolated, they're unaccountable, they're not supported, and then they're just surprised when things go sideways and when things go wrong. And today, we want to talk about what these key problems are and how you can address them. And you might be thinking, well, things are going well at our church right now. I don't think this is something we need to deal with. It's while things are going well that it's the best time to address these issues. And kind of get ahead of it rather than waiting until there's a problem. And if you've been in church for any period of time, I bet you have experienced something like this. You've gone to a church where maybe it was before your time, but a pastor failed, or maybe you've been at a church where that happened, or maybe you're a pastor where, you went through a tough season and you had to leave because you felt really unsupported, or maybe you had a failure of your own and you've repented from that and recovered from that. So we get it. Like, this is a judgment. We're not judging anybody. We want to help churches be healthy moving forward.
Yeah. So let's get into the first point on this, and it's one that I don't know, Scott sent. I think this may be one of the first things I started hearing and learning, many years ago, 10 plus years ago, getting into this area of ministry. And that is this isolation issue that pastors feel lonely.
Yeah.
I mean, we just hear that constantly. And it's really,
Mhm.
it's always kind of bugged me, because from coming into, vocational ministry that we do in our space, from, just being a lay leader, it just never computed. I'm like, why is that? I don't understand why that is a problem. And, but it is. And I think this is part of the system, I think, that can be fixed. And I think it's, a lot of it can come back to the relationship that the pastor has with an elder team, or again, a council, whatever the senior level team is that should be working most closely with the pastor in a
Mhm.
healthy church environment,
Mhm.
that this would exist. Prerequisite, something like this exists.
Right.
Some churches don't have that at all. So I think that's a prerequisite for a healthy church, that some kind of a team like that exists around the pastor up at that level of leadership.
Yeah.
And what is the nature of the relationship that they have with one another? Because too often it is, I don't know, it's this arm's length kind of thing. There's this fear factor on one side or the other, or this sense that it's only business, or this sense that we, we can't be friends. We have to just be like, have this weird church colleague relationship. I don't know. It takes a lot of different forms.
Mhm.
And I think they're all wrong. I think they're wrong. I don't think that's the design. I don't think that's God's biblical design for eldership in the church. I think that should be people that can trust one another and rely on one another,
Mhm.
and be able to combat any loneliness or feeling of isolation. I think the nature of those relationships aren't correct in many churches.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I'm not defending the situation, but I understand it. The higher up you are, the lonelier it gets,
Mm,
because you can't. And again, I'm not saying it should be this way, but the reality from a lot of pastors, you're listening, you know this. It's almost impossible for you to have actual friendships with anyone in the church. Not real ones. I mean, you can be friendly. You can have some degree of authenticity or openness, but every person that you interact with is somebody who either you're supposed to be caring for and shepherding, so you have some authority over, or they have authority over you and can get you
mhm,
fired.
mm,
So the more open you are about maybe struggles you have, or things that you're dealing with, or challenges at home, or whatever, those become opportunities for you to get fired or invited to the exit door, or a loss of respect or whatever. People go, "Oh man, I thought everything was great at home, and now I'm hearing things aren't great at home." Well, maybe he's not a good whatever. Like you go, "This isn't good. I can't be fully honest or fully open because of the dynamics of someone over me who can." I could lose
mhm,
my job, in which case that's not good for my family. So I better just deal with this on my own. Or, this is someone, it would be inappropriate to share down because this is someone I'm supposed to be shepherding, and it's not fair to put on this person the responsibility of carrying my emotional burden. Um, and which I think that part of it probably is okay, that dynamic exists. But what's unhealthy is that there's no one who is a peer, a on an authority level, who you don't have to be afraid that they're going to fire you if you're honest about what's going on.
mhm,
Um, and so, what a healthy church does differently is elders, and this is what you were saying, AJ, elders or board members are there who can function as genuine shepherds to the pastor, not just overseers. Like, we're here to kind of hold the gun to your head and make sure you do what you're supposed to do.
yeah,
And a culture where the pastor can say, "I'm struggling,"
mhm,
without this becoming a, you know, now my employment's in question.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and what I want to be clear, what I'm not saying is if a pastor has done something disqualifying, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about leading up to a pastor doing something disqualifying, him going, "I'm struggling."
mhm,
and being able to get help before it escalates to a disqualifying behavior.
Right. Yeah. We're talking like proactive systems here. Yeah, things that would the better environment, the ideal environment. And I think I don't think it would be wrong for an elder team. I think a pastor again the nature of the relationship should be one he feels like he can be transparent with. But I also think there is a time and a need in which third-party disconnected support services should be available.
Yeah.
After that, I think it still should maybe, they should be comfortable to speak in the environment with their elder team. But then it would be okay for the elders to go, man, we really feel like we're not going to be equipped to maybe help you with that. We
Sure.
want to help you be connected to somebody else. And
Yeah.
they can stay in the loop, not that they get transcripts. They could stay in the loop on how is this going? How are you dealing and feeling about this?
Yeah.
Before something becomes bad. And let me also just say, there's certainly kind of two primary categories maybe that we've seen this happen. One is the sin issue comes out of nowhere in most cases, maybe it pops out of nowhere. And then it's a big thing. It's a scandal, could be criminal. And then it's this necessary required separation between the pastor and the church at that point. But then there's also this other area of this that we've seen in which it's maybe or maybe not turns into a sin issue, but it could just be this overwhelming burnout and heavy stress load, that can just be affecting relationships really negatively. That's leading pastors to feel like I'm going to have to step away from ministry, even short term or long term. And those, again, should be highly preventable with the right environment. But I think isolation is such a driver, for things getting worse than they need to be. So
on a positive side, I think I've seen some movement in recent years where there is a maybe I don't want to in any way castigate old pastors who are in the age cohort older than me or you, but I have seen an increased focus on community in my age cohort and below, and less competition between churches or felt competition. And depending on your particular church's denomination, it may be easier or harder to get into some sort of cohort or just peer group, finding other pastors because they can also relate to what you're experiencing. And so just being a part of a community of other pastors and being able to share, oh my gosh, this is going on at my church, and just being able to offload, because those are maybe the kinds of conversations that are harder to have with your elders, but potentially if the anxiety you're feeling is about your elder board, then hopefully you are in the spirit of Matthew 18 going to them and sharing what you're feeling, but also just the ability to vent and go, oh my gosh, have you dealt with this before? Or, how have you handled situations like this? Having peer groups that you can go to without feeling like, oh, I'm trying to compete with these other pastors or these other churches.
Yeah.
So, if you're, I would say in a healthy Baptist association, if you could be a part of that and go to lunch and learns, go to those things. Maybe you don't care about the content that's being covered in the learn part. Just be there for the lunch, for the community. Or if you're not part of a Baptist association, or maybe you're in a non-denominational church, find some network to get connected with other pastors. I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think there's any one right way to handle this. I mean, the point of this episode is that I do believe that a church senior leadership environment culture should be one that allows transparency, but there is more than one way in which I think a pastor should be able to avoid falling into that isolation trap.
I mean, I don't see it as an either or. I think that it's a both and thing. Like
sure, yeah, ideally,
it's like being able to talk shop with other pastors and just get out of your own bubble a little bit. Be like, if all you're seeing is your own stuff, it can be comforting to be like, oh, someone else is dealing with this exact same thing, and I'm not crazy. Like, this is manageable. We can get through this. So I'm not saying you should have good, healthy community and transparency in your leadership team at your church, but it can also be good to supplement that with some peer relationships that maybe give you some outside perspective or just a place to vent when you know it wouldn't be appropriate to vent that, but you just need some place to do that. And I know this too, like you don't want to dump this on your wife. Like you don't want to come home and we haven't even talked about this, but that's a whole other thing. It's like you come home with all your junk from work and you dump that on your wife, and then you expect her to come on Sunday and not be carrying all of that with her when she sees all those people. But it's also not healthy to not be sharing that. Like all of that plays in. Trust me, every pastor who's listening to this is like, yes. Like I get this. And so you got to have the appropriate outlets in place. And I know that for a lot of you, you don't. And then this is why it crumbles.
Yeah. I think, another symptom of this is sometimes some people end up then maybe oversharing in improper environments, whether it's in front of the church on a Sunday, whether, not, it doesn't need to be like, hey, I got something I got to tell you. It could be something just even slipped in as a part of a sermon or just an intro, or posting online, things that really don't need to be public, and probably shouldn't, but I don't know, maybe they feel like there's nothing else.
You're like, I don't have anywhere else. And you just
got to get this out.
Yeah. Okay. We've stuck on point one for long enough, but you need community. I guess that's the first thing is hopefully you have good community among whatever that senior leadership board that you have. If you're a solo senior pastor and you have no board, probably get one, probably build one, change if you can, influence a shift in your governance model. We have actually going to the Healthy Churches Toolkit. We have a building a biblical board training in there that could be helpful to you. Or at minimum, be sure you're engaging healthy community in networks or peer groups.
Yeah. All right. Our second point is another, I think, super important. We're talking about accountability that protects, not just prosecutes. So this is really into that proactive aspect here. The elder team that, especially in recent years, because there's so much, I don't know, let me not overstate it. There's been scandals and pastor problems that have become high profile, usually because it's a big church. There may be a public persona in the Christian space, but also, the news media loves to see a good pastor failure. So that is good news as far as a lot of people are concerned. But I think that has led some senior leadership teams to want to be like, "Ooh, boy, we got to cut this off quick. We got to respond and be very prosecutorial in it."
Yeah.
And so that's not the point. And we've actually we've mentioned that in previous episodes that you do have to react to things appropriately. But today we're talking about more on the accountability. Let's talk about prevention and accountability. There should be things in place. And I'll tell you a simple thing that I think every church leadership team should have in place is technology monitoring. I think because there's so much on the internet that is unhealthy to be consumed. And it's really, really easy to implement some tech accountability and oversight and monitoring that could prevent this. Now, there's easy ways around all of that stuff. People that want to do things online and not be caught, there's ways to do that. But I think for people that really do care about trying to keep their eyes from seeing things that wouldn't be healthy, there's some good tech out there for that. And that should be, to me, I think every church team should have that in place, Scott.
Yeah. We even have this on our team,
Yep.
We each get an email about each other. And, if this is something that you're like, if you're struggling with this and you're in sort of at an addiction level, like AJ said, this is not probably going to be enough to overcome that. But if you're like, I'm trying to just avoid the temptation, having accountability software is enough of a deterrent to be like this. You only need about, like, the Lord gives a way out of the temptation. He does. And sometimes you just need enough of a buffer to go, is this something I want to do? And, and the Holy Spirit can say, you don't want to do this. And you go, yeah, I'm not going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So, the accountability software is a way to give enough of that buffer for you to go, I don't think this is something that I want to do. And for the Holy Spirit to work in your heart that way. So, that would be good. And don't just have it, like, to your point, AJ, don't just have that running on the pastor's stuff, but all the elders don't have it running on everybody.
That's right.
And that'd be good. I think too, beyond that, having honest, regular check-ins, like, how are things going at home? And again, not in a prosecutorial way, not like, I want to know, I want to audit, how's your marriage going? But just genuine care. How are things going? How can we be praying for you? What are the stress levels? Depending on the season of life that you're in, here at my house, we've got the spring is crazy. The closer we get to May, it's like sports and dance, and there's something almost every night of the week, and that starts to increase stress levels. And then you throw on top of that all of your work responsibilities, and things can start to get out of hand really quick. And it's when those stress levels start to mount that you just stop paying attention to maybe just emotional reactions to things or whatever. And so checking in, being like, hey, I know your schedule's crazy right now. How's your heart? How are your reaction times to things? How are you dealing emotionally? All of those kinds of things are so important.
Yeah. A verse came to mind, and I always have to Google keywords because I can never remember where anything is. But 1 Corinthians 10:13, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you may endure it. And I think that providing a way out can sometimes come in, and maybe should be coming in the form of a group of people that you can trust and helping you through that. So, but I always love that verse. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. I think God knows what's common to mankind. He knows what tempts people, and there is nothing new under the sun. It's all been exposed, but there is a way out. So yeah, I think that's an important one. So yeah, let's focus. I think the takeaway from this, let's focus on building accountability structures, humility, transparency, and relationships that can protect and not just prosecute. Let's avoid the need for prosecution. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Accountability that only shows up after a scandal isn't accountability. It's a cleanup crew. And, and I think sometimes people hear accountability or let's protect the pastor, and they think they mean insulate from criticism. And it doesn't mean that either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or cover up. Yeah. Cover up does not mean protect. That's not
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Protect means to be proactive and to ask the questions before there's a problem and to genuinely care. And not just be in this, and to care for the soul, not just for the organization. Like, we don't protect the pastor just to protect the organization's image, but because we care about him. And we want him to be healthy, and we want him to thrive. Because if he is healthy and he is thriving, then it is good for our organization. So,
yeah.
And I think that actually most boards would say they want that. But I think they're afraid, maybe, like they don't want to be intrusive. They're polite, or depending on the culture of the church, maybe it would be perceived as disrespectful or untrusting, and it's just going to take some time. I think that you can help to alleviate some of that, AJ. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. Just like with the technology, like you wouldn't want it just installed on the pastors, but also on the elders. But if all of this wasn't just protection of the one person, but there being mutual accountability, that these check-ins aren't just happening with the pastor, although it's really important for him because of his role, but for all the other elders also. Like, how are things going at your house?
Totally. I think that should be the mutual relationship on the team for sure. I mean, the biblical qualifications are not different between elder and pastor. I mean, we
Yeah.
hold them in different roles and they have different responsibilities in the church, but the biblical qualifications are the same. And I think the accountability should be the same as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yep. Now you did kind of touch on something though that is an interesting thing though to keep in mind, and that's the different cultures, around the world. I mean, this is being heard around the world. There are vastly different relationships that people have with a pastor in a church, how the pastor is viewed, and what teams might be around him, and how those relationships are managed.
Yeah.
And so I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I don't know. I would say from my worldview, from my biblical worldview, that there is a right way that a pastor should be held accountable. I think in the nature of a relationship that he should have with people around them to maintain a right in a right relationship with God and representing Him, to the people. So I don't think it's healthy for a pastor to be up on a pedestal and not in close communication with other overseers.
Yeah. I mean, I guess a biblical example that like no one had higher authority status in the early church than Peter. But even Peter could be confronted by Paul to say, "You're off base."
Mm-hmm.
And it would not have been appropriate for just any person, I think, in the church to approach Peter this way. But Paul was in many ways was a peer. I mean, he was also an apostle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he had the authority to go, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And so not everyone has to have accountability over the pastor. Your whole congregation doesn't need to be able to give input.
Yeah, right.
But there needs to be some people who do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I'll run the risk of offending because I don't care. I do think that any model of leadership that gives no one permission to hold the pastor accountable is not a biblical model of leadership.
I don't see that in Scripture. That would, I'm not. That would be pretty tough to defend. I think.
I think it would be hard to defend. I can accept that it would be harder in certain cultures than others to implement such a thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's an American thing to say, hey, we should have accountability. I think that that's a biblical leadership principle.
Yeah. What was King David's right-hand man that called him out? What was his name?
Are you talking about the prophet Nathaniel?
Is that who it was? I was going to say Nathan. Yeah. Was that right? Is that the guy that told him the little story there? And David's like, oh.
I don't know that I would describe him as his right-hand man, but it was a prophet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was close enough to him that he would
certainly
hear from.
Yeah.
But I think from kings on down, kings to pastors, we need some accountability in the church.
Yep.
All right. Last point. Rest is a leadership strategy, not a luxury. And boy, imagine the actual job posting if a church was truthful about what they were going to demand from the pastor in his time.
Yeah.
We only need you available like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, constantly.
Yeah.
And your work hours will be, they're the same. Your office hours are 24/7. We've got to allow for some rest. I mean, this isn't a hard conversation to have from a biblical standpoint. If a church is like, we're not really into the whole Sabbath thing, but besides that, we're pretty solid with everything else. But I mean, there's got to be a way for pastors to get some rest, to check out, and not feel guilty about it. Have people in place that they can also trust. So I mean, let's get into some leadership pipeline topics here, Scott. The wheels shouldn't fall off if the pastor takes a weekend, away with his wife a few times a year, or is able to take a vacation, and every few years have a little bit something longer, some sabbatical time. We should have this stuff built in, and where it actually works.
Yeah, I mean, You know, if you just take sort of a biblical view on this, there were 11 or so full feast days per year, not including the weekly Sabbath, and so, and those are to be observed like a Sabbath in the sense that you're not supposed to be working on those days. And then the number of days off kind of would have spawned more than that, just because you had all the things around the feast days, which were kind of work, but also kind of festivally. So, I mean, this idea of taking time off and truly, and like they were obviously all in on the Sabbath more than we are. Like we'd be like, we have a weekend, but we cram our weekends with work and busyness, and true Sabbath, the way that Jews have observed it for a long time. I'm not saying go crazy and like don't turn lights on and off. I'm not suggesting that. But this radical non-work, taking one day a week to radically non-work, is something that we generally don't do. So there was 52 of those a year. Radical non-work, plus the 8 to 11 festivals, days, feast days, where you're supposed to not be working. So, and those were laws. Don't work on these days. And I'm just wondering if we just don't take that attitude. That's especially American. Especially Americans. We're like, no. And I've become like aggressively European on my views on this, where I'm like, except it's a blend here. I'm like a very work hard. AJ, you know this about me. Like I work at weird hours. I'm up late working on things, but then I take my time. Like and I've learned this, that is really bad for my health, emotionally and with my family, if I don't take dedicated chunks of time away with them. And I'm not saying that you or anyone else has to do it my way, but it's a huge burnout prevention mechanism for me. And I think pastors are in this situation like we are. You could go weeks and not realize you've not taken a full day off. You can go a long time and go like, oh my gosh. Because we work on weekends a lot too. So you just like, you roll through a weekend and then you get home and you just start working, and then you're gone another weekend, and then you're like, oh my God, it can be 4 weeks. And you're like, I haven't taken a whole day off in 4 weeks. Like that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
And so to go, I'm taking 2 weeks, I'm going to not do anything. I'm going to be with my family for a week or for 2 weeks or whatever. It's good. So I'm not trying to tell you or a pastor exactly what to do. Figure out the rhythm that works in your church culture, but chunks of time and dedicated time for rest should be mandatory and imposed upon the pastor if you want him to thrive long term.
I think that's a good way to go. I think that's good.
And I'm preaching to AJ because I'm trying to convince AJ to take more time off.
The other day, I was just telling my wife the other day, I'm like, I think I've been working like 12-hour days, like all week or something. It felt like I was finishing everything at like 9 p.m. And that can get away from you. And
you can get away from you.
Like,
and I think that's me personally. I'm like, I'm okay with that in seasons. Like I'm all right with that because I do that. I do that all the time. But there has to be a limit to that. You can't do that all the time. It's gonna kill your family and yourself. Yeah.
I mean, just the other day, I had this another revelation, because I've always been like, okay, if we're going to plan a trip, like a vacation, we're going somewhere, then that's it. That's what we're doing. And I will attempt to not work because we're doing that. And it just like occurred to me a couple months ago. I'm like, I can take time off that doesn't have anything to do with a trip. Just
yeah,
you can
just be off at home.
That's like out of the box thinking right there. Like what is that? I'm not going anywhere, but I'm not working.
Secretly discovers weekends.
That's some revolutionary thinking right there. I don't know if anybody's ever done that before, but
especially we work from home when we're not on the road. We work from home.
Yeah.
So there is this temptation to always be like, well, I can squeeze it in a couple hours on Saturday.
Yeah.
Get some stuff.
Yeah,
done.
for sure. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I've helped myself or hurt myself switching from a desktop computer to a laptop, because now I'm like, I don't really want to be in my office, but I can sit on the couch.
I
and
can
get
sit on
this
the couch
done.
and work on this. Yeah. Yeah, same. Yeah. So this point 3 is for AJ. Yeah.
You can everybody. It's not just me. There's probably a lot of people need to. Plan some rest.
Well, I think that the phrasing of this is really important. It's a leadership. Rest is a leadership strategy, not a luxury. And this is something that really did take me a while to. I felt bad the first time I took an extended chunk of time off. I felt guilty the whole time. I was like, I shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's crazy. It's crazy that I'm not even enjoying this time I'm with my family because I think I'm doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes time. Like it's taken me, I've done this now, I think 3 years in a row, taken a kind of an extended chunk of time in the summer with my family. It's taken like 3 years to get over that, where I go like, I don't feel guilty about it. I work extremely hard. I'm gone a lot for my family. It's okay. It's okay. And some of your pastors need to hear this. If you're a pastor, you need to hear this. It is not a sin to spend an extended period of time with your family. And to boards, I want to say this, like, the church will be fine. It'll be fine. If he's gone from the pulpit for 3 Sundays in a row, like he's gone one Sunday and then 2 weeks, 2 full weeks, and so that would be maybe 3 Sundays. The church is going to be okay.
This is a rare moment that I say anything personal, but yeah, even for me, working on some ministry support for my role, live on our international ministry. It also, I feel like I'm not, I have to kind of earn that. I got to earn people's support by like traveling as much as I can, like always, be preparing and going out on another mission. And so, that plays a weird mental game as well. Like, people are contributing to my livelihood.
Right. You're like, they can't see that I'm on a vacation. Like, they're going to want their money back. Like he should be working.
Right.
Pastors feel that too. Like people are tithing. I can't go on vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not realizing that it's not luxury. It's not like I'm trying to make sure this person makes it, because sure, maybe there are people in your church who they're like, I'd love to take 2 weeks off in the summer, and I can't do that. Yeah, but you also aren't being bombarded 24/7 by people's problems and being asked to carry them. So maybe you can't, but also you're not being asked to do what this person is being asked to do and survive it. Same thing I'd say to you. Like, maybe you feel like, oh, I shouldn't do this, but also no, other people are not leaving their family for 8-day stretches at a time, dealing with jet lag and trying to do a good job. And like, sure, you are taking what might feel like a luxury to you, and that maybe you feel like maybe someone who's donating or supporting our ministry, they can't take that kind of time, but they're also not making the same kinds of sacrifices that you are, and so it's okay. Like, it's all right. And I don't think there's a single person. I don't think there's a single person who supports our ministry or who supports their church who would go, I want my pastor to be unhealthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think that anyone would want that.
Yeah. That's true. 100%. For sure. All right. At the risk of this becoming any more about me, let's draw this episode to a close. All right. Well, this was a little bit more of a serious topic, but it's something that, Scott and I have talked about recently that we think is important. It's important to hear about. It's not necessarily our specialty. I mean, we certainly help with healthy boards. And as you mentioned earlier, we do have some content in the Healthy Churches Toolkit about building a biblical board. And so, we love helping with that kind of thing.
Yeah, if you need counseling, we're not your guys.
Definitely not.
Don't come to us.
No. But, people think we're counselors sometimes.
We
are good listening. We're good listening ears, but we're not skilled to help you with all of that. So, all right. Hey, thanks for being with us, everybody. And I hope you take this episode seriously. If you're, whether you're a pastor or a leader in a church, work on having a healthy environment for your pastor, and giving him what he needs to help your church thrive, which is what we're about in helping you. We're glad you're with us. We'll see you again next week.